Do 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 do. Josh's Order Corner.
That's me. Let's see if I can keep one of these under 5 minutes. Challenge accepted. So, the last read that I finished is this right here, Vinnie Stigma, the most interesting man in the world. Forward by Roger Murray, with Howie Abrams assisting him in writing. And it honestly reads as though he's just sitting there with Howie, shooting the shit, talking about his life, talking about his achievements, and talking about being an icon in the hardcore community. Now, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I listen to all types of music. My involvement with Furnace Fest 2021 and 2022 really expanded my horizons with a lot of music. I was a Hot Topic kid. I worked at Hot Topic for a long time, so my music was very aligned with what you would expect from Hot Topic. And I missed out on hardcore, and I missed out on real hardcore. In 1980, Vinnie Stigma formed Agnostic Front. The first show they played, they were billed as Zoo Crew, and they just hadn't decided on Agnostic Front as the name. And I missed out on the early days, A, because I wasn't born yet, but growing up, there wasn't hardcore music. So I didn't know who they were. I didn't know who Madball was. I didn't know who Bane was. And so I had to play a lot of catch up. This was a very interesting book. The most interesting man in the world. Vinnie Stigma has done a lot. Culinary school dropout, wrestler, he's a cancer survivor, and he just preaches this be good to each other, entertain the fans kind of philosophy. Like, he really seems to put his best foot forward in all of his interactions and all of his activities to put on a good show for the fans. And he even like embraced Roger's younger brother Freddie at such an early age, took him under his wing, let him live with him, and now Freddie is the singer for Madball, which is another huge name in hardcore. On the back here, it says the Godfather of New York City hardcore and founding member of Agnostic Front invites you into his Lower East Side pad to regale you with tales from his extraordinary life among mobsters, punk rockers, and a bevy of iconic artists and personalities, none of whom is as fascinating as the inimitable Vinnie Stigma. Vinny's story stretches from his upbringing in Little Italy in the 50s and 60s amongst the tight knit Italian families to becoming one of the Big Apple's earliest punk rockers in the 70s, playing and visiting such eclectic downtown haunts as Max's Kansas City, the Electric Circus, and CBGB. Still, Vinny Stigma is not your run of the mill rocker. He has dabbled in cooking, professional wrestling, acting, martial arts, yoga, and other creative disciplines. He is a father and a cancer survivor who helped pioneer skinhead and tattoo culture in America and has mentored hundreds of fledgling musicians and artists. His vivid stories are illuminating, surprising, inspiring, and often hilarious, featuring vintage photos throughout, a handful of signature Italian recipes, even a 4-page comic, a heartwarming children's story, and a crossword puzzle. The most interesting man in the world is a journey through life unlike any other. Now, I purchased this through Premier Collectibles because when I get books, I love signed books. So it does have the signed book plate in there. And that is the most hardcore autograph ever, like with that almost graffiti style to it. I love that. Uh, and it was a good read. I love memoirs, even if it's a band that I don't listen to every single day and know their catalog through and through. I love memoirs about older bands, bands who've been around for a long time, because I like reading about how history aligned with them or how they adjusted to history. For Agnostic Front, they really shifted a lot but still held their ground in the music and how it was expanding from punk into hardcore. You had the hardcore sounds on the West Coast, and then you had Agnostic Front really building the hardcore sounds of New York City, kind of conflicting with Maximum Rock and Roll Magazine. Maximum Rock and Roll Magazine really like sounds like, from everything I've read, they would just pick bands to hate and just try to make people hate them left and right. So it was amazing to hear about their growth and what was going on. Let me actually read you a piece from here. Page 22 is what I have highlighted. So, agnostic front has two parts to the name. The first part is the belief part, trying to figure out what you believe. A front is your stance or your point of view. You could be in doubt, question authority, and then take a position. It could be political, social, or religious. I know when you look at it in the dictionary, it's listed under religion, but is an ambiguous name. I looked at it from a lot of different directions. He's very thoughtful in what he does. He doesn't just do it and then try to figure out later. He puts thought into each activity, from his wrestling to his acting. There's ideas behind it all. There's a pride in the writing. We did this. We set the tone. He knows what he's accomplished, and he's not bragging about it. He's just stating it for the fact. And that pride makes this a really exciting read, because you're reading about a real human who's not afraid to show the vulnerability and show the pride in their accomplishments. So I highly encourage you to check this one out. Even if you're not a fan of hardcore, it's interesting to hear about how New York City was as he was growing up and how it became now what we're familiar with it as. Max's Kansas City is historic. Aerosmith started playing there in their early days. CBGB, Ramone, Agnostic Front was more of a house band than the Ramones were. So I'm glad I read that one. It's good to have a nice palate cleanser, and seriously, memoirs and just seeing how things fit into history and time are some of my favorite reads. So, Vinnie Stigma, the most interesting man in the world. Check it out. Go listen to some Agnostic Front. He invented the term mosh. That's what I'll close with. Bad Brains would say mash it up, and he would come in with his New York accent, and it sounded like he was saying mosh. I love that. It's October. Spooky season is upon us. This is the next book we're going to be talking about, Out There Screaming. It is an anthology of new black horror edited by Jordan Peele. So we started it. As soon as I'm finished with it, we'll have an episode up to discuss it. But between now and then, read something, tell me about it. I can't wait to hear what you're enjoying.
Do 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 do.